Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Khaled Hansraj. I'm the program director with Intergen. Phil, thank you very much for allowing us to ride on your coattails. It's a fantastic platform, and I sort of arm twisted Phil and said, "Let me take over your show for one Thursday." So thank you for that, and we really appreciate your collaboration. Like I said, my name is Khaled. I'm with Intergen. Intergen's very focused on two things. One is venture investing, so we've got a seed fund. And then secondly, we do a lot of work with companies that are post-product market fit and really helping them scale their business from a people, process, GTM perspective. We've got a number of our clients and business advisors and investors in the room. So thank you all for coming. We should be wrapped up by 6:15 at the latest. Got a few minutes at the very end for Q&A, and I'm hoping this topic will be very relevant for the founders and angel investors in the room. So before we get started, I'll just start with Omar from Badaya, and then go over to Pratik, and then Jen. But the question to introduce your company is, tell us succinctly how you make day-in-the life better for your customer. Okay.
First of all, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. Arian Zalar from AI. We help architecture, engineering, and construction firms win more work with AI. And the way we do that is by turning their unstructured data into revenue pipelines. As we get a mining for information, corpus of files, and extracting these such from that, and we use those to company more work and be more efficient in how they do that. So that's it.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me over here as well. I just did not want anyone to be confused about where I'm from. So Pratik, co-founder and CEO from Finofo, bearing the entire brand today. How do we make our customers' day easier and lives easier? So Finofo is a payments automation platform helping businesses automate their payables and receivables. We primarily worked with mid-market companies, but recently we've been getting a lot of interest from small businesses. So we launched a new plan which allows small businesses to send international payments or domestic payments for $29 a month, unlimited. We connect with ERPs and make their lives easier by reducing the time it takes to run payables operations and allow them to grow internationally to be able to collect money. So the easiest way, if you guys have ever think about TransferWise, right? So we are a combination of TransferWise and Tipalti, a better version of both of them together. So that's the best, most succinct way that I can explain it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Jen Hunter. I am one of the co-founders of PayShepherd. And PayShepherd makes the day of our users better by automating what the compliance checks that they need to do for their contracted services. What that really means for the user is they'd be responsible for reviewing paper timesheets, Excel data against contracts that they might not even have, thousands of different rates. And it's our customers, about 40% of their spend profile. So we are making the users' lives easier, saving them sleep at night and saving them a lot of time. And we're saving a lot of money for the people that pay for the product.
Awesome. Thank you. So the reason I picked this topic, how to oversubscribe your seed round, is CVCA came out with a report 4 weeks ago. And the report was very pessimistic around 2024 seed financings. The average deal size was down, number of deals was down, everything was just pointing down for seed and pre-seed. But these three Calgary companies before you have all had oversubscribed seed rounds in the last 18 months, and some just 4 weeks ago. So Calgary is bucking the trend, and we've got some three companies here that have done that. So we just wanted to get an idea of how did you guys buck the trend? Capital is down, risk investing is down, but the three of you have gone out and done something pretty amazing and gotten more demand for shares than shares available for sale. And most companies can't do that, especially in this climate. And so we're hoping to learn how you guys did that, and hopefully this is beneficial to the entrepreneurs and angel investors in the room. So my first question is, really cutting right to the chase, is teeing up demand for shares. What was the one investor relations strategy that you guys thought in hindsight worked really well I put in my question here, silence the noise in the VC's deal funnel. There's a lot of noise in that funnel, and you're one of many companies that's vying for their limited pool of capital. And so how do you guys get ahead of all of that noise and say, no, just pay attention to us and let's get this deal done at a price and in a structure that's amenable for both of us? So Omar, do you want to start?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of companies raising, and it's hard to stand out. I think we at the start we tried to use urgency as the way to get investor attention, and that's what everyone told me when I first started. I was use urgency, and I realized that didn't really work at the time that we were raising. What did work was kind of evolving our messaging to the investors as we learned more about what they cared about, and then two, building proof points for what they cared about throughout the fundraising process. Proof points that we might not have had before when we first started fundraising. So when we first started, we were, AI for government contracting. And then as an investor, you hear the word government, and you're like, I don't want to touch this. How do I stay away from it? And so that was one thing. And the other part of it is that you have this sea of AI startups that are saying they're going to believe in something, and they don't actually do that because they're really early on and don't have any proof behind it. So we kind of focused our messaging on a segment within the government contracting space and realized that architecture, engineering, construction is a meaningful piece of that. But at the same time, we were less focused on the actual process of proposal writing and more about going a level deeper and saying, hey, how do we pull insights and turn that into revenue? And then the last bit is over time, we got some early customers. Those early customers got results, and we just made sure we advertised those results and showed it first. And that's kind of what validated the interest over time.
Awesome. Thanks. Pratik?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I think there are two angles to it, right? So you have to create FOMO and you have to build context. So the investors who actually led our seed round, they were not the first time that, you were not the first time reaching out to them just 4 months back and, starting the process for them. They had been getting our investor updates, although they were not our investors, but they had been getting our investor updates. And one thing I do want to highlight over here is that the best cold yield that you can send to an investor is the investor update. So redact the key figures from it and the revenue, what are financial figures that you don't want to share with them, but definitely share the update with them so that they have filled some context around their business. Like a great example for this would be, let's say if you want to invest in public markets, right? You're not going to just pick a stock and just go all in at one point in time, right? So you have to build that context. You have to see how's the management doing, what the management commentary looks like, how are they performing in each earnings call and quarterly releases. So you have to build that context with the business. You have to understand the management team and then be able to then invest. That was the same principle that we applied as well, that you have to run a very tight process. You cannot do 10 other things at that point in time. So if you're running a tight process, you're reaching out to as many investors as possible during this time to create that FOMO, because you're going to get signals from different investors. And some people are just going to say, okay, well, we find a lead and then we're in. Don't worry about them, right? Don't even reply, in my opinion. Let's just move on. The only thing that you can ask them is if you do have some leads that push you deals down the line and downstream, would you be able to make those introductions to us, right? So for us, it was just building that context, sending investor updates, adding as many investors as possible on those updates, and then hitting it when the time was right.
Really like that. I agree with added context for your business. I think we did that in a little bit of a different way. And I think it helps manage the noise for the VC as well as for the founder or for the people who are raising. And what we did was create an investor memo. And a lot of the noise that can come back your way when you're raising and be really distracting is the follow-on questions from the tire kickers or someone who really isn't intending to take it to the next steps. So what we did was respond to every question with a tailored response that could be scalable to anyone to ask that question through video. So they're getting context from us as a founder. They're getting that background information, and our memo then got a frequently asked questions list. So the first time we had sent it out to an investor, they could get their own context on their business, as well as maybe a question that might have sparked that they maybe wouldn't have asked, but they could go self-source the information. And that really built a lot of confidence because it was really transparent communication. And they also got a flavor for the founders and the team who was responding to that specific question. So they got to meet more of the team as well in that.
Thanks, Jen. That's really interesting. At an FAQ with a video. That's really cool. Since you got the mic, I'll ask you the second question. One of the investors that you have in your capital stack is Nashville Angel Capital Network. How did that come about?
So the introduction to National came from a pitch competition that we were a part of, and we won the pitch competition, and one of the judges on that wanted to also personally invest in the business, and so it was a network effect there. That judge brought Nashville Capital in as the lead investor for our round, and so it was a really compelling message in a fast 3-minute pitch that really broadened our horizon for Breezing Capital and then getting into the States. And it's been a great journey with them.
Awesome, thank you. Pratik, you mostly raised institutional money from the get-go. Your pre-seed was mostly institutional. Your current seed was mostly institutional and all U.S. So for a Calgary-based company, you're playing in the big leagues as a very junior company. How did you cross the chasm as a small Calgary company, no brand, not really known, and you're sort of in the deal funnel, like in the mouth of the big whales? Like, how did you manage that optic and the IR strategy around that?
Yeah, well, I'll have to give you the entire story from the pre-seed times. So this were around late 2022. That was when we decided that we want to raise our pre-seed round, and we were talking to a lot of Canadian VCs because I thought Canadian VCs would be the right early pre-seed partners for us. And late 22, if anyone remembers over here, was the time when NASDAQ was going down 5% day over day, and people were just when we were talking about risk capital not available, it was actually completely shut off during that time. So what we did was there was like this one Twitter message from someone who just posted a thread on how she sent a cold email to get a job at Andreessen Horowitz. And she'd had the entire thread that, don't be afraid of sending a cold email and so on. And I was like, hey, taking the leaf out of your Twitter thread and sending a cold email over here and referencing that entire thread, and very succinct, very simple message that boring business, XYZ, huge TAM, and something that can be read in like literally 20 seconds, right? So that worked out. Like, she replied and she's like, send me your deck. And we got connected, and she connected me to the fintech team, and we met with a fintech partner over there, Andreessen Horowitz. They brought on the rest of the team over there as well. That one meeting transpired into 3 meetings. And while we knew that we are just too young for Andreessen Horowitz, like, we are talking about no product, just a slide deck. And that was just not going to work, and we knew that. And somehow, like, one of the partners, Joe Schmidt from there, took a liking on us and took a liking on me in terms of connecting me to all the downstream funds. And he pretty much like made sure that, hey, I'm going to connect you to all seed funds in the Sandhill Road over there. And when Andreessen Horowitz is sending a message, then, you pick up a call essentially. So that's how we got in touch with tons of pre-seed stage funds. And that's how we raised our pre-seed pre-seed round. It was led by Motivate Venture Capital and out of Chicago. Now I'm just getting confused. So many investors that I talk to. But yeah, that's pretty much the story. Like, when you're in this phase, and the people who led our seed round, they actually said no to us during pre-seed. So, and that's why I'm saying, context building, it matters quite a lot, because if it's a no at some specific stage, it's not a no forever. So
awesome. Thanks, Pratik. Omar, you've got mostly local pre-seed investors, but I've seen you in coffee shops hitting up a lot of investors, and that's where you and I met, at a coffee shop, just by pure happenstance. And you were there pitching an investor. What's been your experience raising? You can tell the crowd how much you raised, I forget, but what's been your experience raising from angels and angel funds in Calgary?
Yeah, so we raised a little over $1 million entirely from Keeley investors, and a mix of institutional and strategic angels as well. So I think the approach that I wanted the Western Canadian experience, so we actually didn't seek out a single USBC, knowing that it was probably very limiting. But it's kind of an experiment, like, hey, how far could we go with just doing what we did? And it took a bit longer than I would have hoped. And specifically around the trust building, I think the risk tolerance for Canadian investors is a bit lower. So what we found is that at the start, getting some strategic angels that are very aligned that can get the ball rolling was really helpful. And then from that, you just get on the radar of institutional funds. And then once they start to see what you're doing and the progress around it, knowing that you have some capital behind you to kickstart things, things really fall in place after that. So, yeah, I made a very intentional decision and kind of treating this as an experiment of like, how far can you go with purely Canadian, especially Western Canadian investors.
Right. Okay. And then now going to deal structure, Omar, I think I recollect you having one type of deal structure in the pre-seed, and then it sort of morphed into a different deal structure. And I'm trying to figure out, for the benefit of the audience, how did you harmonize that along the way so that all the investors got the same deal in the same round?
Yeah, good question. So when you first started raising it, I was like, what's the simplest structure that would get us money in the bank account? It was like, just pick a safe, pick a number, give it to whoever's willing to give you capital, make sure they get good treatment. Then once institutionals come in, they have their own terms and playbooks for how they do things. They kind of have to abide by. And what that means is that retroactively changing some of the terms that you might have had before. Now, there's a way to do this where it's good for everyone. The early angels want the company to grow and you to have enough firepower to grow it. The institutionals want, at least the ones that we picked, cared about doing right by the early investors. And so I wouldn't say there was an exact science behind it. It was more just make sure everyone feels heard and gets what they want in the long run. But yeah, there was a bit of back and forth just to make sure that everyone's happy there.
Right. And how long did raising pre-seed take you from the get-go to the day you closed?
So we had our first meeting with the institutional that led around in October, and closed a couple months ago. It hadn't really publicized it, but yeah, that was kind of a timeline. Throughout that time, we had done the angel portion pretty quick. VCheck Swoop kind of came in, and then the due diligence process and the coordination. I think once the institutional came in with the new terms, that's what kind of took a little bit of time. Yeah, so I guess 5-6 months. Yeah. So from first meeting to
right. And so you eventually convert all your convertibles at St. Joe priced, right? Yeah. So what do you got priced in?
we got a price.
In a pre-seed. Yeah.
And on terms that kept everyone happy.
Right. That's great. It all worked out in the end.
It all worked. I mean, it wasn't easy. It was there's a lot of me learning to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Pratik, you do your Leeds water tower out of LA. How did you guys think through negotiating with an LA-based investor, and how did you guys work through the morass of here's our term sheet for Finofo, here's what they want, and how did you guys meet in the middle, but also knowing that all three of you had a lot of leverage in that negotiation, because I'm pretty sure you guys knew that you had something people wanted.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be new. But what I would say was, I don't know how would you differentiate in negotiating with people out of LA versus people out of Canada, but it was very much driven by, at the stage you essentially just invest in people at the end of the day, right? So founder and founding team and products pivot as well. And we pivoted multiple times from the first time when we pitched our idea to the same VC, Water Tower Ventures. It was a completely different idea. Like, we wanted to do currency hedging, and that was a space that we were in, and that's what we wanted to build. And then from that point on, we pivoted to, okay, well, we're going to do payments for mid-market companies, and now we're expanding the suite to adding expense management and accounts receivable and so on. So negotiating with them was not really about negotiating. It's always just about finding a lead that you believe in, and we had a great multiple conversations with these guys, and it was just like, it felt like that these are right people that we should be building the business with, because it's a very long-term partnership. We're talking about seed stage, right? So even if things go really well and we keep growing, then we're talking about it at a minimum, like 5 to 10 years of partnership at a minimum. That's what I'm saying. So that's, from a negotiation standpoint, it was not really like, one thing that I do want to highlight over here is that they did come with a term sheet which we did not agree with, and we had to go back to them. And one thing that we did was did all the work that they would have done to recognize that how this deal is not in the best interest for both parties. So instead of like telling them that, hey, why don't I counter with XYZ, You just do the entire work for them that, okay, well, this is why this is not a good deal for both of us. And here's an entire memo that we've done, and that shows your work. And then, it's almost like negotiation doesn't exist anymore because you just like done their jobs.
And the reason I bring up LA investor, I think that would get you into a lot of, call it long, drawn out negotiation with a Canadian investor. If you said, well, there's no discount on my safe, take it or leave it, like that would be many emails back and forth. And we'll still no resolution, but the LA investors, they swallowed that deal. So that's my point, is maybe there's a little bit more risk taking in that part of the world.
Yeah. I think it's a common sort of like template for Canadian, but they don't even really like look into it, that you can actually structure a safe with no discount. Like that's pretty common in the US for sure.
Yeah, well, it's important for the angels in the room to know that's happening these days. That was the trend. His deal with no discount. When I first met him, I was a little floored. He's going around town, Calgary, shopping and investment on pre-seed with no discount. I go, what's it for the investor? So, but you got the deal done.
No, to bring it back, because my investors would be watching this, so just it's not what's in it for them is it doesn't matter because you've already put in a price cap, right? So there's a price cap already on the safe. So that's what they're concerned about, and they've got it, right? Like the way we see economics work is that everything is dependent on minimum ownership, right? So if they've hit their minimum ownership target, they don't care if, could be potentially just get a little couple percentage more, right? Like it doesn't matter.
Good point. Jen, we were just talking during the pre-session, and I mentioned to you, you've got Thin Air Labs, a bunch of angels, but you, on your most recent round, which was $7 million, you had Inovia. And to me, they are arguably the best investor in the country. And that's the gold standard. So talk to us about how a seed stage company in Calgary was able to land arguably the best investor in the country to be your lead and have you oversubscribe that round. That's very, very impressive.
Thank you. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think that one of the ways that we added context to our business with all of our lead investors, with the exception of Nashville, was early relationships. So if I think back to Thin Air Labs, we had office hours with James Lockery, like the day that we, decided that we were going to leave our jobs and like start this business. And so, fast forward, and you have executed on that. It was like an easy win for James. And, that first year was the first year that I met Sean with Inovia, and kind of rewind 6 years later, he's our investor sitting on our board, and we could be happier with that relationship. For sure, there comes a new level of expectations and skills in that negotiation. But I think that really they were interested in the founding team and the business that, like the problem that we were trying to solve. So,
right. And was there anything specific as you think through diligence of going back and forth with the Inovia team and Sean that struck the Inovia team as this is because they see like 500-700 deals, maybe a quarter. I don't know. It's like they're busy. But what was the one thing that really struck Sean as, wow, this is unique and we should really press into this and see if this is going to be a good partnership?
I think that's something that interests investors from our business is the size of our deals. So average contract size is quite high.
What is that?
Our average contract size is probably north of 150. And Inovia does, in their due diligence, they speak with your customers. And a quote that I really can keenly remember from one of our customers was, the value that we get from Pay Shepherd is way more than what we're paying for. And that was 2-3 times higher than, or like 2-3 times our average contract size was that customer. So our customers see a lot of value.
Right. What else would you say was something in the diligence phase with Inovia that you weren't expecting or ready for, and that you had to sort of scramble to come up with the evidence or the documentation to suffice and satisfy their inquiry on that particular aspect of diligence?
They go deep in every facet of the business. So, technology, the go-to-market motion, customers, like they interviewed our customers. I think the deal was probably not done. Obviously, they're in the due diligence phase, but that was like a nail biting time for us. Is like, are we going to get this to close? What, are they going to believe in everything? Is it all going to be there as foundational? And we were really happy that it was. But for sure, what they found was also things that we needed to change for our next stage. And I think that was really about the relationship and the partnership that you're going into, knowing that this is a company that we'd want to be partners with and that will take the coaching and can ask themselves hard questions. And that's really about the people, I think.
Right. Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Since you got the mic, I'll just jump to the MVP org chart. So what was your guys' MVP org chart when you raised your seed or even your pre-seed? Like what do you think looking back was like the key dream team to get not just your part in the market, but to satisfy the investor on the other side of the table and convince them that this team can get it done? And yeah, we'll add more people, but this team alone has brought us this far. And sometimes people are a little bit too light on team or too heavy. But just thinking about what were some of the key roles that you had that really allowed you to get in front of some of the best investors, not just in Canada, but across the US, and convince them to give them your money when they have a lot of different options?
Yeah. I mean, our pre-seed round was just us three founders. Our CEO is in charge of sales. I was in charge of customer delivery, and our third co-founder was in charge of the product or developing. And the three of us were product. Then kind of in our pre-seed stage, naturally we grew teams underneath of us. And if I look back on what we may have been missing in those times, it'd be, skills that maybe we didn't have and didn't recognize that we were missing. And I think Inovia in our third round, they really brought that out in the due diligence. And it was the founding team that sold them, but not necessarily the whole leadership team. And so being able to ask those questions of like, what will you need in the next stage to get these things done? And what will you prioritize? And I think that was one of the most important questions. Inovia maybe having recognized and seen certain things and kind of backing the CEO and what they really wanted to prioritize and being able to have those conversations as well as come to an agreement.
Thanks. Pratik, any feedback from the investors based on your initial team, like raising pre-seed? I think Desjardins was in. Like, what was the org chart like when you were trying to shock your deal to Desjardins and all these very early, big investors, but you were very early, and so I'm just trying to get for the audience's benefit, like what was the makeup of the team that they go, whoa, that team, I'll get behind that.
Yeah, I think at the Desjardins level, it was mainly just one partner from there that believed in us and believed in the vision and is a really true supporter of our just whatever that we want to do, because in pre-seed it's essentially like you're just backing the founding team, right? And we are not doing exactly what we pitched to Desjardins, but they're happy. So, but motivate, they believed in us. Again, it's the same thing. Our MVP org chart at that time, first of all, there was no MVP. So the org chart was just three people with a vision, with an idea, with something that we all believe that, we can pull this off, right? So it's all about showing or showcasing that you have the ability to execute. And that comes in multiple different fashions, right? So it's not about just building the product up there. It's about doing that analysis for the investor, showing them that you can actually pull this off when there is funding available, because some products can be built without funding for sure. Other products cannot. For us, it was just three co-founders at that point in time, and we had to go through a co-founder exit as well 10 months later and so on, and so we've had our fair share of trials in the journey in terms of how we wanted to wherever that we are at this point in time. It comes with a lot of effort. So
yeah, awesome. And Omar, when I saw you in the coffee shop, I think what you said to me was it caught my attention. You said, well, we're still doing customer discovery calls. We've done 25 calls and we've closed 5. So you weren't even trying to sell. You're doing customer discovery, and in the process, close about 5 or 6 customers because they were pretty enamored by what you're building and the value you can deliver for them. So you were obviously doing sales, but what was the team like beyond just yourself selling product that got you to get this $1 million pre-seed round done in six months? It's fast. 6 months is fast for an early stage company, but talk to us about your revenue traction the first 6 months, because I think that's very impressive as well. And that probably led to a lot of investor confidence.
Yeah, it's funny because when we got probably a third of our round done, it was just me. Like I was the only founder. And we actually got a kind of pushback, as you would expect for investors, that they would like to invest in multiple founding team members, and not just one. But that wasn't why I got a co-founder, is because I noticed that it was really valuable and that the company needed to have someone who can flex in the areas where I wasn't good and vice versa. But yeah, at the start, the way that we kind of got started off the ground is at a consulting project where I built a little MVP, and the person who I did the consulting project for ended up subscribing to that MVP. And I was like, oh, I wonder if someone else would find this interesting. And then had a bunch of conversations. Through those, as I was presenting the product, people would start paying me. And I was like, oh, people would pay for this. This is interesting. I wonder why. Let me talk to 25. And then once a certain percentage of them, you can see the light in their eyes and they show you their credit card. You're like, okay, we're on to something. And bringing on the co-founder was more to kind of scale that than it was to get the next investor excited about having more than one person on the founding team. But yeah, today it's just me and my co-founder, and some fractional help.
Wow, it's a very, very lean team.
Yeah.
So how are you going to burn through $1 million with 3 people?
A branded Cybershark.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. You put that in your investor memo?
I kept that.
Yeah, got that. Okay, good. Awesome. Great. I got a whole bunch of questions here, but I think one of the 2 questions that a lot of founders are probably wondering about is what does it take to raise seed or pre-seed in terms of month-over-month growth in revenue? Like, what's the benchmark? Like, what are investors saying that's too slow, or that's fast? Like, I wonder how you're doing that, and can you scale that? And then 2, let's just start with that. Like, what is what did you guys get for feedback when you were pitching your deals in terms of this is too slow, this is just right?
I mean, the baseline that we started off with was pretty low, right? Like when we first started raising money, we had 2 customers, and if you get 1 extra customer, you're growing 50% month over month. And so I think the ones that looked at that number at the pre-seed level as a way to validate that the company is a good investment are probably not the investor that we would have wanted. The good ones were actually looking for learning, like the rate of learning from each interaction that you've had. Those are the good ones, because they'd come back a week later and say, hey, what did you learn from the last week that you were working? And how is that going to help you do the next thing? And so when you show them that you're learning and executing on those learning week over week, I think those were the ones that I thought were the most genuine, not the not the revenue numbers. Yeah, it was 50% month per month.
Oh yeah, for sure. What's it now? Like, how many customers are you adding a month right now?
Probably 30% month over month.
But how many customers would you say?
Right.
Yeah, 3, 4?
Yeah, around 3.
3 customers a month. And what was your ICP, like a construction company?
So our ICP is architecture, usually construction firms between 10 and 200 employees. So if you're architect, think of the engineering firm that your cousin might work at, or a construction company that will lead and generate contracts for projects. That'll be the provider to us.
Right. Okay, awesome. And Pratik, how many customers a month are you guys adding right now? Now that you've got all this fuel in the bank, and what's your projection for how many customers you will add going forward?
Yeah, I think currently we are in this unique sort of like dynamic where we always targeted mid-market customers. So our ACVs were pretty high, and we started getting a lot of small businesses signing up on our platform as well, just finding us organically. We get about almost 60,000 visitors on the website every month, and some of them are within the ICP that we target. Some of them are not, and that was primarily just the SEO tactics that we were using, and these are all organic, right? So nothing with paid advertising. But now we are at a stage where we think that paid advertising would be the right sort of tool for us, and we are experimenting at this point in time, learning lots, and of course finding people who can help us with this. And we found a resource And at this point in time, I would say like it's month-over-month growth rate. Like I'll actually give you a better insight than just like giving you a number, because when we were raising our seed round, and this was around February this year, and we were growing quite fast, and we grew our revenue pretty rapidly as well during that time, and we were showing these metrics to this prospective investor, and he was like, "Well, you're not growing fast enough." And for me, it was like, "Well, I'm toiling really hard to grow, and our team is working really hard, and I think that this is significantly higher because there's a ramp up here in payments. You don't just like start from day one and get all your vendors on the platform, right? So there's a ramp up period. Once when you start acquiring customers, they take about 2 months to get their processes in line with your new product, and then the real growth starts showing up. So I think in the days of AI, where the growth curves are looking rapid and exponential almost, some investors are sort of like trapped in that mindset that we want that kind of growth and we want lean growth, and we want folks who can run companies at 20 employees and generating $10 million in revenue. And it's all possible. And even in our business, it has the possibility of doing it. But we also have to recognize that what is sticky revenue versus something that's just curiosity revenue. So I hope that I answered your question.
Yeah, you kind of sort of did. You didn't really answer my question. What we just hear was, like, what did you have, like, how often did you have to press the kettle? We gas that or the brake belt. Yeah. To get this kind of investor attention. Just so we can benchmark, like, how hard you gotta push power to the wheel, and the investors go, that wheel is going fast enough, how hard or more.
Yeah, I think we landed a few really great deals during that time that definitely helped us get the story built out, because initially it's not about the numbers. Like when you're really like showcasing, the top line number shows up and that's it, right? And you're sharing your deck and you're sharing the growth rate. And to answer your question, it was like around 9% growth rate for the last 12 months at that time.
Not doing 9%.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we started with a decent high number because, we got into TechCrunch in August 2023 during our pre-seed, and that bought us a lot of inbound interest as well. So we started off when we launched a product with a decent sort of size. And then from that point on, like growing to like, that was sort of what I like to say is a curse in disguise when you get really popular immediately. And then you have to like recognize, oh, well, this is easy. Now we are going to be able to get just 20 of these kind of customers, and then we are there. And we're going to be raising our seed in 4 months. And that's not the reality. So there was a lot of learning for us. And we got to a stage where we think in terms of our targets, we want to grow as fast as possible. We want to be generating $3.5 million in revenue by the end of this year.
Awesome. Thank you. Jen, selling a $150,000 average contract value deal, is that a price that you guys have arrived at this year, or has it always been the price? And how have you guys been able to grow as fast as you are with those kinds of price points, and with the customers that you have or trying to go after? Like, it's not a big number, but it's a number that gives people pause on the other end of the phone call when you're cold calling.
Yeah. That was the average size for those early stages. I think the average size has really gone up a lot. And I think about kind of revenue growth, not month over month, so my apologies, because our contracts are manual. In our earliest stage, from our seed round, from pre-seed, we had 5x our revenue. And
say that again.
5x.
From what point to what point?
So in our pre-seed, we had revenue of around $100K. 100 to maybe 200K. I forget when that client closed. And with our seed round, we have 5x that revenue. So back like 3-4 years ago. And then we had done that again with our third round of investing. But that makes our sales cycle quite a bit longer. And I think the important part for our business was zero churn in 6 years. And the capital efficiency. So revenue growth wasn't the only thing that was attracting our investors. That's
a really important point in capital efficiency, especially in this climate. From For the founders in the room, Jen, I would say most of them are sub. What's your current ACV? Average contract value?
250 to 75.
Yeah. So I think most founders in the room are below that, significantly below that, some in some cases. What would you say has given you your team the gumption and the ability to grow a business when you're trying to move a $250,000 product as a Canadian company across the world, or at least across North America? Like, do you have in-field salespeople? Is this an outbound motion? Like, how have you been able to do this and then move product at $250,000 a pop? It can't be easy.
I think the biggest challenge for us is that we have enterprise clients and they are technology first. They've all gone through failed implementations. They're very tired. They don't want to deploy one more technology. And the business process we solve touches multiple departments. So you have to get them to rally the stakeholders to even be able to make a decision, which is what makes our sales cycle quite long. But the proof is in the pudding. The software calculates its own ROI based on the changes that contractors make to their billing, and it's provable and it's repeatable. And I think that is hard to ignore for any business.
Okay, well, that's good. Talking about provable, Jen, I think you mentioned already, but one of my questions was, what's the provable ROI? Because customers, especially in this market, especially when it comes to digital transformation, they're getting hit up by so many different companies, big and small, and they don't know which ones to pay attention to and which ones to just punt out of their funnel. And so I think one of the questions they ask is, how much upside can you give me if I take a risk on you? And you answered the question previously, and you said that your customers are experiencing 3x the value that you charge them, approximately?
You try to average 4x.
4x. Okay, so they're generating about $1 million in net new realization for a $250,000 purchase.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very significant, and I think that not only gets the customer's attention, but probably gets the investor's attention. Yeah. What about the two of you guys? What would you say is your customer realization in terms of financial value when they take a risk on adopting your product?
So there are direct savings for sure. So for example, when you have to send money internationally, currently if you go on your bank portal or anywhere that you're currently sending a wire from, you pay like $40 per transfer. And it's primarily because, you're using old technology and old payment rails like SWIFT to be able to send that. And it's costly because it's using old tech at the end of the day. So from $40 to almost paying nothing, that is a direct saving by using Finofo. On top of that, we have a lot of software automation for process automation and workflow automations. That reduces the time it takes to run your operations and the visibility that it brings. Because in the end, of course, there are two kind of companies that are targeting, hey, we can help you grow your revenue, or we can help you cut time and money currently. And there's another angle to look into it as well, that when you say, okay, well, I help you save $100K, and it depends on the size of the customer. If you're helping save someone $100K direct costs, that equates to whatever the profit margin is. You divide that by profit margin, and that's the net new revenue that they wouldn't have to make that much revenue to be able to make that savings, right? So you can spin it that way as well, and we do it in our GTM because it's easier to sell a product that helps a company grow revenue and grow top line than something that actually helps them save money. So
I just want to dig into one more thing. So customers look at investing in terms of two things. One is financial resources and time resources. And when you pitch, you'll save a lot of time. A lot of customers go, yeah, but my employees are sunk cost. They're here anyway. So their time is their time and it's paid for. So saving time is nice, but I'd have to get rid of them if there's a time saving. And for whatever political reasons, a lot of people may not want to do that. So is a time saving argument that compelling, do you find, when you're in your sales motion relative to the financial saving?
The other coin of time savings is capacity building. So you are building the capacity for the existing workforce, and that's essentially like, it depends on how you're looking at it and what stage the prospect is at. And if the prospect is at a stage where they really care so much about direct cost savings, right? Maybe they're going through some restructures at this point in time, and maybe they're going through some debt covenants, and all they care about is like direct cost savings. Can you show me the money? And the other times when most of the time, companies are looking to grow, and you need to build the capacity to allow them to grow. And that's what some products end up doing.
I mean, Jen, do you have any commentary on how your customers respond to "we can save you time"?
For us, it really depends on the customer. I think that the time savings is compelling in heavy industry because you don't want your employees sitting behind the desk managing their billing. You want them out in the site, managing safety, managing productivity, getting equipment back online. That's really revenue generating for them. So the time savings component can be helpful for prospects who are recognizing that, or who have a lot of are dealing with a lot of noise from their employees, where you're expecting too much. I can't manage this without tools, and so they see that aspect of it. And I really love that companies should, or I hope will, start to recognize that a bit more, because that you do sell technology off of efficiency and off of building capacity, and it shouldn't always be around like what is the costs that would be getting saved at the end of the day. I think we've tied ourselves to that for so long that we want to be recognized for more than just the nickels and the dimes that are getting saved.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Pratik. One more.
Yeah, it's a good point that you bring, because for us, it was like first and second order impacts of what we were doing here. Like first order, I guess, let's give an example. One of the ways that we help these businesses win more work is by speeding up the proposal writing. A lot of the work that these firms win is through the RFP process. So you can come in and you can pitch, hey, we help you write proposals faster. But that is like a baseline expectation, and it has to have a second order impact to it. So we come and say, as you pay, hey, in the worst case scenario, you save 80% of the time that you spend on proposals. But with what you unlock from that, it's insights, access to insights that will help you win more work. And that's through helping understand better the landscape of work that's coming to you and be able to respond to it. Imagine if a job that you apply to took a week to build the app or do the application for, versus clicking a button, and that extra time that you get allows you to apply to more jobs, and that has a win rate associated with it. And so I think what we learned is that coming in with that first order of expectation or first order of impact when at least pitching, just to get their attention, knowing that the worst case scenario, that's what they get, and kind of selling the dream on the second order impact is what Seaboard does.
Awesome. Good. So, Tyler, am I your board? Good. We hear two different points of view from the VC community. One is we prefer vertical SaaS because you can go after an ICP and a beachhead and nail it and own it. And your branding is directed at them. Your cover page, your landing pages, it's all the same messaging. Versus all three of you are horizontal for the most part. And all of a sudden now you've got to figure out how to position the brand so that a mining company, a construction company, and a trucking company all interpret your value prop the same way. And that's a slightly more complex challenge. And you got a much bigger TAM and a much bigger SOM, but you got to figure out how to deploy your GTM resources in a way that allows you to generate revenue fast and not dilute all your horsepower across too many verticals. So there's pros and cons, but what have you three found in terms of the benefits and maybe the disadvantages of being a horizontal SaaS company? And we'll start with you, Jen.
I'm smiling a lot because obviously we've encountered this. For us, it is all of our customers want pure proof points. So, show me another mine, show me another utility, show me another pulp mill. My response to them is, here's a list of contractors you have working on your sites. They're also working at this mine and at this utility and at this pulp mill. So you have the same problem. But that's not as easy to get across in a marketing material as it is face-to-face. So one of the reasons that we're so outbound to be able to get that messaging across. I think that really we need to be better at it, if I'm being really honest. It's something that we need to focus on because it does slow us down.
Okay.
It is hard for sure because you have limited real estate on your web and limited resources when you're thinking about putting your word out there, right? So what messaging are you going to go with? But since we are competing with banks and likes of FX brokers and so on, and they are very generalist type of services as well right out there. What we did initially was we targeted different industries and try to go do deep dives and interviews with our prospects. What are their pain points so that we can understand the lingo and the language that they're using in their day-to-day so that we can use that language when we're doing cold outbound. We cannot use that directly on our website. Of course, there are industry pages and so on, and we've been trying to leverage it as much as possible. But we landed customers from rubber industry to folks who are actually manufacturing defense satellites and supplying it to foreign governments and SpaceX as well, to technology companies, to a very small service provider. We learned a lot by acquiring these customers, and as to your point, showing that proof and the peer proof, and that already exists because we targeted different industries right from the get-go and learned what sort of lingo really works for them, and that has worked with us. But it's still very difficult because you have limited dollars, you have limited headline capabilities that you need to use in your paid ads, and you have limited visual assets that you can use. You have, of course, there are technologies available these days where you can leverage ABM and do a lot more than just regular advertising, but still we're learning.
Yeah, I mean, we verticalized recently after going horizontal. So we were initially just all government contracting, and then decided that the AEC industry, architecture, engineering, construction, was A, what was resonating the most, and B, where the opportunity was. And that might be a function of our product, given that it's with AI, you kind of have to build a robust workflow around best practices, and it's hard to build a best practice for everything. But it is very doable when you have a disconnected industry that's underserved, where you can stitch those workflows together, figure that out, and kind of focus in on it. So our messaging is actually evolving to be more vertical. That's
awesome. I just was on your website this morning, so it's like a closing landing page or a lead gen landing page. Yeah. It's very impressive. This is a few words. Give us your email. We'll come back to you with some information.
There's a refreshing to work, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's great. I'm pretty sure your top of funnel is just getting piled on. So good for you guys. Thank you very much. We've got a few minutes for questions. So we're at 6, and we got a few minutes for questions. So hopefully you keep them short, punchy, and you guys do too. So Phil, take it away.
Yeah, maybe. Yes.
My question to Omar and I guess to the others, having done a price round at early stage or pre-seed with limited financials, how did you optimize the valuation to not give up too much equity as well as to stay, let's say, attractive to the investors? And I'm not sure about Finopro, but then I'm not sure about your pre-seed count. Was it rise as well, or it was safe? So.
Yeah, so we did a price round. I don't think that it is a science as much as it is an art, just knowing who are your investors, what are their goals, how much you need to raise to get to the next stage, and how much shall we struggle to give up, and kind of balancing both. The other side of that is there are comps. So you just look at what other pre-startups have raised, and at what valuation in this recent time, that industry, and then you have it build comps around it. So I don't know if I can give you a good answer for how to do this for the next subsequent price round, but that's how it was for us. Comps plus manage expectation.
Yeah, it was not a price round for us, but the general, I come from the VC industry as well. So I can tell you that you need to work in reverse. So where do you want to, really get to, and what your end goal is, and then you work backwards from a valuation standpoint and see that how many rounds of dilution are you going to go through to achieve that specific outcome. And you have to start thinking that way. And that's how your investor is thinking as well if you're raising institutional money.
I want to share that our advisors along the way have been instrumental in helping us figure out and navigate what we want to be striving for and what we want to negotiate on. So I would just advise you to make sure that you have that network of advisors who are like that one step ahead of you and have recently gone through what you're trying to go through or what you will go through. And what I picked up here was, you know, you might have had local advisors, but you had U.S. investors. So maybe targeting some advisors that are local to where you want your investor case to be.
What are you doing with that?
Hi, I'm Sylvia, and going through your LinkedIn profile, I realized also if you had wear investor hacks before creating your company. Like for example, I think Oma, you used to work for CDO, and Jake used to work for SCC, and you have like acquired a company before and exited. So how do you think like used to be an investor help with you building a venture backable company?
I'll share that. I was like, I had investor background. I had no investor background. I worked for Fund Credit Canada out of like my agriculture college. So it was definitely not something that helped me on the road to being an entrepreneur. But I did found a company prior to Pay Shepherd with my current partner, and it was completely bootstrapped. We didn't even have a credit line. And so what we took from that business was how to manage a business based on your cash flow and based on the revenue that you're getting, and asking friends really nicely to borrow money. So so I'll share.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so briefly, like the investor hat that I wore is that I bought a small SaaS, great, and sold it. And so the investor hat that I wore there, I think, wasn't very sophisticated. It was, these guys could find 20 customers for their product, could probably find 20 more, and in theory, have double valuation. But I think through that, what I learned is that there's a really fine line where AI is actually useful and where it's just fluff. And talking to customers along the way when growing that was where I think what I learned the most. So I think it was more of a product intuition that I picked up that led to the next idea after the exit than it was being a sophisticated investor.
My name is Luke West. I'm the CEO of Collegium. We're in the construction tech space as well. Jenna, my question is for you. With your average contract value being so high, ours is similarly high. It's in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. I'm curious how you priced yourself in the market so that you could get the returns that you have and obviously be attractive to investors.
Without going into too much like specific details, happy to have a conversation. With our founding customer, we've had really open conversations around like, what are you willing to pay for this? What value do you see? How do you typically invest in something? That customer in that market was a 2x investment, made sense for them to send money. And so it really helped us to find the right mark and then just get the traction and see if other people are willing to pay the same thing. I think we've done some interesting things. So, trying to hike that as high as it can go, which is not always the best thing for the team or for the success of the customer at the end of the day. So that's kind of how I would answer that question. Thank you.
Question.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike. My question relates to that FOMO, trying to get investors to have that buzz, that discussion. Got any practical advice for that? Are they copy once themselves? Are you sort of managing that process? How does that work?
Sure. Yeah, so I think you have to like nail your research already, that you need to know exactly who you're going to be hitting and people that are already in your investor updates and also other funds that you're really interested in. Like my agenda was that I'm not going to be hitting a specific fund for the first time when I need money. Like I need to have built that relationship already before. We got a lot of inbound as well from investors way back, and we kept them in loop, kept them updated. But to build a FOMO, if you're starting completely fresh, let's say you're starting a pre-seed company, you do not know any investors out there and so on. My recommendation would be to like talk to investors that you do not want to invest in your company first. Get in that groove of like, pitching your company, pitching yourself. And then when you feel really confident, that you need to have all the research. Like let's say you're hitting 100 people, right? So you need to figure out best possible ways, like exactly how you would do customer acquisition as well. So it's the same way that you're sending cold emails, you're reaching out to different community groups, you're reaching out to portfolio companies, you're trying to like get them to connect you to those people. And that is assuming that you do not know anyone in the space, right? So But running a tight process is very important, and that's the only thing that you're doing at that point in time, and that's how it should be. That you're not really thinking about anything else because you decided to raise venture capital or any capital. That should be the only thing that you're doing at that point in time.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up there. Colin, thank you so much. This was an incredible panel. Thank you to everyone. I can honestly say this was the first time any moderator has ever used the word gumption on a panel before. So thank you. Give it up for these guys one more time.